Is there a new like a topical anti-androgen that's superior to RU or something like exciting other than RU?
The first topical anti-androgen ever has been FDA approved. It's called
Castor oil is being used as a
Oh,
hair anti-hair loss method. And what
in
I
I got
speculated,
you. I got you. I got. Sorry, guys. I got you.
it's
yeah,
a it's like a I don't know if you know how it's
It's a
used in
prostaglandin.
E2 agonist or something
Oh,
like that, but it's actually used to induce labor in women alongside of pharmaceutical PGE2. So if you use like, I think the protocol is like 60 milliliters of castor oil. If you slam it, you like induce labor. Or if you want to shit yourself, you can also take a much lower dose, but it's still effective. And then at a lower dose than that, you can get some hair growth effects as well as beard growth, which is
I've
interesting.
seen the beard growth. Yeah, but it's not as
so
significant as Minoxidil. Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
what I do notice, I mean, is just anecdotal evidence, and we talked about this maybe 2 years ago, right, Derek? When
Probably.
you
Yeah.
mentioned that video about castor oil, and then I told you I've been injecting castor oil for 5 years, 6 years. That's my carrier oil of choice, and I have great hair. And all my clients that run castor oil have great hair also.
Huh. I don't think it would be enough. I don't think it'd be enough that you're ejecting, but
No,
it definitely is like
it's
it made me think
anecdotal,
at
obviously.
made me think at the time. I was like, shit, maybe I should get some of that.
Wait, while we're on this
Yeah.
topic, briefly, not to, we'll go back to this, but briefly, Derek, is there a new like a topical anti-androgen that's superior to RU or something like exciting other than RU?
The first topical anti-androgen ever has been FDA approved. It's called clascoterone, CB0301, or brand name Brizula. The only thing is it's being approved at a lower concentration for acne, which is the
Mm.
formulation that has been approved now. And their anti-androgen topical for hair loss prevention is still in their pipeline, but it should go through based on the not only clinical data they have already supporting it, but as well as the fact that their acne preparation made it through. So what a lot of the hair loss guys are going to do, supposedly is get the acne version and just like mega dose it, even though I don't know how that's going to work. So a lot of people are still buying it on the gray market sort of thing. But in practical application, it's definitely safer because there's more data reinforcing it. And you actually have, studies that are publicly available you can dig through on humans that are recent as opposed to like 20-year-old things on an abandoned chemical. But anecdotally, like I've used it, I don't find it any more potent than RU. I don't think, in fact, I think it's weaker milligram for milligram. It definitely is, but it's less side effect ridden. But at the same time, it's steroidal in its chemical structure. So there is some potential negative feedback through the HPTA. Like they found something about like adrenal steroid production or I forget what it was. Something was like down regulated to some extent. It was like extremely negligible though, like likely not a problem whatsoever. I'm not trying to say RU is better though. I would say in general, if you had, it's so expensive and cost prohibitive though right now that it's not, most people can't even run it at the dose you need, which is like 75 milligrams twice a day on your head would cost you like hundreds of dollars every few weeks or something like that. I forget what it
Mhm.
is. Like a lot of people aren't going to throw down for that, but in general, from like a tolerability standpoint, it's probably the safest topical anti-androgen we have available right now, where you know what to expect. It's actually being tested for this purpose, but I don't necessarily think it's the most effective one milligram for milligram.
Uh,
And for an effective dose, will the side effects be worse than some of the other compounds?
Um,
We always have to look at the effective dose, right? Like, let's say the effective, because it's less potent, you need a higher dose. And then besides the extra expenses, would the overlapping side effects be worse?
like what it has going for it is when it's metabolized, it breaks down into more like moot compounds that aren't necessarily like potent antagonists of the AR. So like when it gets systemic, at least if I'm remembering correctly, so hypothetically it's supposed to give a more localized effect because once it enters like systemic circulation, it gets broken down into more like mild anti-androgen metabolites that are a lot less antagonistic in their effects. So you kind of get like more local activity relative. Like I know that's kind of a little bit of a bro science stretch on it, but in practical application, it seems pretty well tolerated with basically no sides. When people do get sides, though, they represent the same thing you would expect from an anti-androgen, It's just less prevalent, but the compound itself is also less effective. So like at the end of the day, nobody's going to prevent hair loss with this stuff, in my opinion. Like I think if you have very, very mild hair loss, you might be able to stave it off with this stuff entirely. But for the majority of people, finasteride is still going to be the front line. And then your subsequent spike in scalp testosterone that you can't do anything about with just finasteride, you would like clean that up with an anti-androgen like CB0301, RE58841, something that can bind to the AR, because 5-alpha reductase inhibition, you're not actually doing anything about any other androgen in your body. It's just DHT being reduced up here. And there's like, you can see how much of a spike you get in scalp T when you take 5-alpha reductase inhibitors. And, you know, milligram for milligram, not nearly as problematic as the base DHT molecule, obviously, but you're still, although it's like almost unnoticeable for a lot of people, you're, instead of going like this fast of hair loss, your hair loss is now going like this fast.
Yeah.
So that's where you would come in with the CB or the RU or the, you know, some people way back and they use things like flutamide. Like I heard you talking on your episode recently about anti-androgens. The ones you mentioned are all primitive, like old school ones, like bicalutamide and flutamide. No one uses those anymore, really.
No, there was a second class that I mentioned, which are these they deal with the response elements. That was a newer generation.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Those are the old
ones
ones
you mentioned. The ones you mentioned with bicalutamide and flutamide. Those are
Yeah,
like
there were two groups. Yeah, that was
bicalutamide is like a drug used by like people who want to transition from male to female, but it's horrible for like, it's very primitive and shitty. And interestingly enough, SARMs were actually designed off the chemical backbone of bicalutamide.
No way.
Which is really weird. But anyways, and that's sort of why I had a lot of interest in the SARMs. Like a lot of people don't get, you know, where the therapeutic promise of them comes into play. They think they're all overhyped, but when you actually look at the chemical structure of them, they're like more refined versions of old school anti-androgens. So like there's different applications more than just like bodybuilding shit, which is what people are actually looking at it for. So that's why I sort of have the interest in them. But anyways, flutamide is like the shittiest of the shitty anti-androgens that's been phased out like a long time ago. Not that REU is good either, but it's more tolerated than flutamide at least. And there's people who are using things like hydroxyflutamide. But as far as like next generation anti-androgens, I'm pretty sure the ones that are used for like actual prostate cancer and stuff, it's like darolutamide, enzalutamide. Those ones I think are like the newer generation ones.
So the reason why I ask is like a couple of folds. You mentioned this idea of you inhibit DHT, you get more, and then you got to topically deal with the increase or just the testosterone in general, even without the increase. You got to deal with that too. So you use the topical thing there. But also then there's some people, for example, that take finasteride and then have debilitating like penile dysfunction, for example, which comes directly because of the androgen paucity in the penis. So my idea here to repair this, which I've been doing with consultations, is to do a topical testosterone locally at the groin, and then to try to get them to do a topical androgen receptor blocker in the hair, and then to take their finasteride, and then if they need potentially more, then they take like FSH or RFSH. But then basically the issue is this: we're trying to raise the systemic level to the degree where they don't get the androgenic side effects. And we reduce like by using progesterone and other things to try, or psychological things to try to reduce how much androgen you need. But then at some point you got to use the topical thing also to try to limit it as much as possible.
It's like 7 different pharmacological inventions just to prevent hair loss and at the same time libido issues. Because I get a lot of consultations.
It's a seesaw. It's like and like especially size, libido, and hair loss. Those three together, and brain. Oh my God. And brain concentration, those three are like, this is the worst situation.
No, you have to make a conscious decision. That's why, I mentioned to listen, hair loss. Yeah, it's from a cosmetic perspective, it's not very desirable, but, trying to get that under control with the nandrolone only cycle or megadosing finasteride or some of those creams, that they come with their own problems as well. And I have a lot of consultations now for guys that even use a marginal dose of finasteride to get their DHT under control, and they got terrible libido issues.
But you can
change it. Last for months. No, of course you can change it. Yeah, you can change it. There's much better approaches out there, but it's still, it's like the easy approach is not the best approach, being on finasteride, because you always need to do something extra. And unfortunately, not everybody gets these libido issues. So some guys have awesome libido on finasteride, and some guys, they get murdered.
Yeah, but sometimes I do believe that these side effects can be. I mean I've done it. Like one
Oh,
of
they
my
definitely can be reversed, 100%.
yes, no,
Yeah,
not
you
just
Yeah,
can.
reverse. No,
Like,
not
You
just
can
reverse.
definitely deal with it and
Yes, deal with it.
thrive while
Yes.
you're on it. It's just a
Yes,
matter of what you're willing to expose yourself to concurrently is the thing, though.
Exactly.
Let's talk about your
Overtime.
15% minoxidil first. Have you tried
Yeah.
ethanol and glycerin as your vehicle?
So I've only ever used minoxidil 15% from one source. And so I've used a brand called 2Gain, which is produced in India. I don't even know which solvent it uses, but it's been very effective historically when I tried it. Now that my hair is short, I thought, why not use it? Because the reason is just for the audience to know, although obviously everyone believes, including myself historically, that minoxidil must not protect hair from dying, it's just the idea that maybe minorly the growth factors, because in general in the body, growth factors prevent cells from apoptosis. So I think that plus the short-term effects of just having thicker hair may be worth it. I
But
don't
do you
know.
think something I've been wondering is when you get to the point of using like 15%, you're applying 150 milligrams to your head twice a day. Would you not
Oh,
simply be better off having a 2.5 milligram tablet and getting way more minoxidil sulfate conversion in the liver and probably getting maybe the same exact effect with less burden on your system potentially?
so I've tried both, and I've tried oral minoxidil for probably a week or so, a couple of years ago, and I had an arrhythmia from it. I noticed my heart rhythm was a little off.
But
So I got
15% you can tolerate without
yeah,
it?
with zero effects, zero. So it's
Huh.
majorly different. And then by the way, Derek, that makes me think, because now I'm taking Dutasteride daily. That makes me think if you apply Dutasteride locally at a thick enough, it at least you saturate that area. So it's just totally. But I guess the Dutasteride, like you said, it eventually will kill the hole in the system. But anyway, my point is just it's saturating that area.
If you saw some of the topical Dutasteride blood work, you'd be like, what the fuck is going on? It doesn't make any sense. But for whatever reason, topical finasteride, I don't know if it comes down to molecular weight, if it comes down to half-life, and it comes down to, some people just don't know how to report their shit properly. But topical finasteride easily goes systemic. And after, a couple of weeks of use, you're looking at the exact same hormonal profile systemically as oral finasteride. However, with topical Dutasteride, entirely different story. You have guys who are getting scalp biopsies done and finding giant reductions in scalp DHT, but keeping their systemic DHT in a therapeutic reference range, which is really, really weird. So I know tons of guys, well, not a ton, but at least a handful of guys who I, converse with about like advanced hair loss topics, and they have been able to get less side effects from topical Dutasteride and more effects than when they took oral and topical finasteride, which is totally contradictory to what you would think would happen. So their like go-to approach now is using topical Dutasteride, and that's it, and it works for them just fine. And there's some people who do the Dutasteride mesotherapy where they get it injected into their scalp.
Oh wow, I never heard of that.
Yeah, it's like a becoming a more, well, it's not popular at all, but it's becoming more popularized in the community in Europe more so, where you go in like once a month or something, you get Dutasteride injected into a bunch of spots in your scalp, and you come back a few weeks later when the scalp DHT is kind of picked back up, and then you get them shotted again. And because it has such a long half-life, you can get away with going like very infrequently and getting hair loss prevention.
So my theory is that even if you're taking, so for example, in the finasteride case, you're taking finasteride in your scalp and your systemic levels are the same amount as if you were taking finasteride orally. That doesn't mean that your scalp levels of finasteride are the same. You may have more scalp levels because the skin is not very well, generally not very well vascularized or doesn't have great blood supply. So your serum levels are probably going to be higher than your
the scalp versus serum, it's like direct reflection of one another. Like I've looked at all the data.
Oh really? Huh?
Yeah, so even with like the biopsies, they're showing topical finasteride is not doing anything. Like you would hope theoretically, if I have 5-alpha reductase is most dense in this area of tissue.
Okay, I have proof. Okay.
Well,
listen to this. I have proof. So I've tried this. So how about this? When I put minoxidil on my hair for 6 months, and my hair doubled in volume. My beard didn't get that much thicker. It got thicker, but not that much. And then I put my minoxidil not on my beard even, but just here. And as I told you before, my beard went all the way up here. And it actually got annoying to the point where I had to stop doing it to get it to go back because I looked like a wolf. And then I've tried also putting minoxidil somewhere else. I don't know where I put it exactly, but it was somewhere toward the back. And my hair on my neck started really growing thickly. Whereas when I put it on my head, the hair on the neck grew a bit, but not as much. So there is definitely and this would be over months at 15%. Yeah. So even though it went systemic, there's some kind of local.
No, I believe that on minoxidil because we don't even understand really what the mechanism of action is fully. Like no one really knows what it's doing. Whereas with finasteride, we know what it's doing. It's targeting 5-AR, and I can tell you like where's the density of 5-AR. It's here. It's here.
No, I'm just talking about the minoxidil. I think it works especially when you and I know people like there's so many studies that say 15% isn't more or 10% isn't more than 5%. But I've tried. I mean, like I told you, like my best friend, the Korean guy, he was on minoxidil 5% for years with no finasteride, and by the age of 30, I got him on 10%, and I see him 6 months later, way more density.
Yeah, so it was I'm considering just biting the bullet and trying minoxidil again personally, because it's like I just don't want to deal with the shed, and frankly the bloat was something I didn't like. It's not like I've actually checked my genetics to see what my sulfotransferase enzyme activity supposedly is, like the gene that encodes for it, and how if I would be a responder or not. And supposedly I'd be a good responder. I just like have never followed through because every time I did it, I always had like I gained like 8 pounds of water in a week, and I was like, fuck this. So I just never did it. But it's definitely like for me, if I wanted to get to like perfect, I don't know, like 19-year-old density again, it's either, well, I could do like really aggressive shit, which I'm not going to do, or I can do like the mainstream stuff would be minoxidil or transplant would be like the two things to get back to what I would consider to be very, very good density that I'm like, I don't really give a fuck about hair loss anymore kind of thing. So I don't know, like to me, it's definitely like a lot that I've learned over the past few years too about compounding with tretinoin, adding in the microneedling, increasing the percentage concentration of the minoxidil, comparing the efficacy of topical versus oral. Like a lot of it I've learned over the years that's just above and beyond just take your 5%, put it on your head, and like that's it. So it definitely has a lot of merit. And I'm definitely considering.
I actually think you're the foremost expert on this subject, genuinely. And the reason why I say that, the reason why I say that, it's not just said lightly, because I've listened to on Peter Atiyah's podcast. I don't know if you heard the hair doctor guy who came on. I don't know if you heard him, Derek. So he has Alan Bauman, one of the top foremost hair guys. And I swear I listened to his thing and I was like, I know Derek knows far more about the subject.
Yeah, I was so impressed. These guys don't have time to research as much, I feel like, because they actually have, it's like the consultation thing where it's like you either make your money with clients or you invest your time into yourself, and like which are you going to do? So like even talking about like topical Dutasteride again, I think I was like one of the first people to, like, so much of the bodybuilding stuff crosses over with the hair loss. So I was the first person to talk about how when you apply something like a cream or sublingual or something, you skip first pass in the liver, which is also responsible for the production of some of these dutasteride metabolites that have their own inherent anti-5-alpha reductase inhibitory properties. So you're actually changing the entire inhibition properties of the drug potentially very significantly when you apply topically versus taking it orally as well, which a lot of people don't think about. When you take finasteride orally, you get different metabolites, or at least quantity of metabolites, than you do when you apply it orally, and like vice versa for dutasteride, and potentially significant enough of a difference that it's like not a totally different drug, but it's like you're getting a different proportion of these metabolites that have their own 5-AR inhibiting properties. Let's
talk transplants, because so my friend sent me his blood work. So my good friend from high school the other day sent me his blood work. He's like, hey, you want to look through my blood work? So I looked through it. I was like, hey, your lipids are doing great. Everything's gone way better. And then I was like, whoa, your C-reactive protein is 13. What the hell happened to you? Are you sick? So he said, oh, I knew you were going to ask about this. I said, what's going on? So he said, I bit the bullet. I said, what? Because he had just told me. I said, I haven't heard from you for a month. Where have you been? He said, I went to Kenya for 2 weeks. Then I went to Iran for 2 weeks. I said, he grew up in Kenya, but I was like, Iran? So then he's like, I bit the bullet. I did the hair transplant. So I was like, oh, this is what the C-reactive product. It was 13, by the way. So apparently he did like, he said 3 days of 8 hours. I don't know if it was, but he did 15,000 hair follicles.
Yeah, it's a shit ton.
That's a lot. He said he got a discount. Yeah. He went all in. He went all in.
Yeah, like that's like, I don't know how much of your donor area that is, but I would imagine like he doesn't have a, I don't know how much left. It's not even my area of expertise, to be honest. Like you can tell how.
I know. It's usually 5,000 max or 10,000 maximum, and maybe they'll do it step by step. I asked him, my question was, he hasn't responded yet. He's really hairy. I said, was it from your chest? Because it's a lot of hair to 15,000. I'm like, bro, you don't have that much. But the point is this. What I want to ask you about is, Derek, is this. So look. So some of us, like me, like I have to actually, when I go to the barber, I have to like line out the edge of my hair here. So there's actually, okay, for the audience to know, this isn't as weird as it sounds. So when you do a hair transplant, you got to pick hairs, usually from here, you try to do individual follicles, but at some point, you're going to start thinning the sides here. So you're really redistributing stuff. So ideally, you'd like to distribute stuff that you don't have to. At some point, a lot of people start putting some chest hair or some back hair in the middle here to try to fill in things where you can't really see the texture of it. But anyway, so the point is, what I was going to say is, I was thinking these things are really unnecessary. Like these should be moved somewhere. And, you know, so I was thinking like, why not start there? Like that's no loss. And then you could start with a little bit of these on the side, maybe, you know? But anyway, are you going to plan it earlier? Because this is the problem, right? When you start receding, like you can see, I have a little bit here of recession, right? So once you start not having this line, which I have, it's so hard to rebuild your hairline. Like even with a toupee, I don't know if you noticed, I watched your video, Derek, where you put that, where that guy had glued his hair thing on. Yeah. He had a bit of recession here on the side. So when he put it on at the top, you could tell it wasn't real because it was a bit here. So you never want to lose this like hairline, right? So I was thinking like for the younger guys listening to us, if you really care about your hair, you might want to get the first couple of transplants on your actual hairline, just thickening it a bit so you know where the hairline is. Of course, those are the hardest ones to do because the hair has to point the right direction. And so you have to have an expert.
Yeah. I've been sort of fortunate in my pattern that it's diffuse, whereas, you know, a lot of people, they get the traditional like recession and then this part stays like super dense. Whereas for me, it's just like diffuse, like going backwards fully. So I don't know, like for me, I think if I got a transplant, it would be very easy to make it look good because I already have the structural integrity is still intact sort of thing. So, but yeah, I'm not really sure what the best strategy would be. I would imagine it's just like, if it were me, I would just find the most credible surgeon and be like take their advice, I guess. Like, I don't know, you know, for me, I'm not really sure.
So all the hair transplants that I've seen are done very nicely.
Because you live in Thailand.
No, not here, but like the guys that did it in Dubai or, you know, or Brazil or whatever, because you get a lot of travelers here, right? And they tell me, yeah, well, I want you and Leo and Derek, and but I got a transplant. You know, it's too cumbersome. So they just do a one-time thing, and it looks beautiful. You don't even can't even tell. You know, you might have a little bit of a dot, you know, where they took the donors from. We have a little bit of scarring.
No, I bet you Derek disagrees. I bet Derek, don't you often see like a line like?
Oh, I see people. I see it all the time.
All the time. I see. Because it's too easily done.
It's because me and Leo look for this stuff, whereas you are like you don't research things that you don't have as a problem.
No.
Yeah.
No. Or for me, it's mostly acne. You know, the acne scars, and then I say, "Oh, you used to have acne in the past." Like we all get our expertise with the issues that we face, right?
Yeah.
So but. I see a lot of this derma where you do the little dots, you know,
I'm about to fill it in. Too. Yeah, I want to ask you, Derek, is that like this derma roller? Should people be doing this? Is the optimal thing once or twice a week?
It depends on the depth and what you're doing. And to be honest, as far as what you're trying to accomplish with it, it gets kind of complicated because on the one hand, the more frequent you're doing it with a shallower depth, you can hypothetically enhance the absorption of minoxidil. In addition to that, you might be able to upregulate. Supposedly, there's like the evidence that suggests that you can upregulate the sulfotransferase enzyme activity through this like punching process, which is the whole thing that activates minoxidil, essentially converts it to the sulfated form. But 1.5 millimeters is where you get like the recruitment of growth factors to recover the damage you've inflicted upon yourself, which also has hair growth properties too. But then you can't do 1.5 millimeters frequently throughout the week. You're like literally have a bloody scalp by the end, and your scalp's irritated. It would be like doing the most hard back workout of your life and then trying to max out on deadlifts like a day later. You can't really do it until you've recovered at least like for me personally, my scalp gets red as fuck to the point where I'd have to wait like 3 days before I could even think about touching it again with a microneedling device.
Oh, but could you use
I've
minoxidil
noticed
the
that.
next day?
I've noticed that every time you wear a cap, then
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Oh, is that why you wear a
that.
cap? When you wear that
Yeah,
funny
yeah.
cap that's like a small cap?
Usually, but now I just like filming is such a priority that I don't even microneedle lately because I can't afford to be on camera with like a bloody fucking head at all anymore because I'm recording every single night.
Literally yesterday, I was watching one of your videos, and suddenly Derek comes and he has this hat. I was like, I've never seen a hat before. What's going on? I was like, Derek wears hats. Does he?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so
like it's unsightly if you've just done it and you go record. It's like, what the hell happened? You get like you like burn your fucking head or something. So
I would do the same, when I have pimples and that need a little bit of an intervention to clean out. Yeah, I would do it after recording or the night before, so all the inflammation will be gone. Because on those, HD cameras, like on Zoom, you don't really see it, but on an HD camera, you're like, what the hell is that? It's like it's like somebody punched you in the face, like a little boiler.
But,
it's nasty.
But guys, I
and
forgot.
People are quick to point it out.
Derek, go ahead.
So the one thing I would say about the microneedling is the best data we have is using 1.5 millimeter depth once a week. And we know for a fact this recruits at least the microneedling induced growth factors and recovery factors and whatnot. But as far as does that trump the enhancing absorption of minoxidil by doing a more frequent, shallower protocol? I don't know. Some of the best results I've seen are by guys who are doing like half a millimeter like every other day and then applying their minoxidil like right after, which is you would never apply your minoxidil right after a 1.5 millimeter session though, because you're literally have wounds on your head and you might as well be taking oral minoxidil at that point. So I don't know, like if it were me, I would probably if I was trying to go for maximum absorption, I might try the more frequent, shallower version personally.
Do you use a numbing cream?
No, even for 1.5 millimeters, I don't. Okay. And anybody who can't handle it either, I think has, I don't know, just like a.
Oh, so it's no big deal. Okay.
No, it's not. Okay. I guarantee the stuff you've lived through in your life, there's no way you're going to be like. I've
done a lot of things. I've done a lot. I just recently injected cerebrolysin in my neck, so
like some guys literally like rub their head in like fucking numbing stuff, and I'm like, dude, it's not that bad. Like,
no, it's my wife. My wife told me I had to. That's why I'm asking you. My wife is like, I bought the thing, and she's like, "Oh, you don't have the numbing cream?" I was like, "Numbing cream? I need numbing cream." So that's why I get to ask you. But I was like, I don't think these guys need numbing cream. But anyway, I wanted to ask a bit the steamer though, guys. So I've been trying the steamer for a couple of times after I went to the gym. I've used a steamer you can buy like a portable steamer for your face.